I'm calling this content series the One Closed Loop Show, and it's going to be the weekly heartbeat of the cohort. We are filming this, so it's on Zoom. The next step for this content will be replay, an embargoed replay inside of our Circle community, so you can watch it back as many times as you want. You can comment, have discussions around the content, especially when it comes to more interesting and intriguing speakers. And then eventually it'll go out of that 2-week phase and it'll wind up on YouTube. If for any reason I wind up capturing content of you guys asking me questions, just rest assured there will be a disclosure form sent out if I plan on featuring your faces on YouTube anywhere down the road. But that's not a problem we have to worry about today. And you can always opt out of that. We can always cut around it and we can not use your faces or your names and stuff like that. My guess is there will be few of those instances, but not a ton. So that's it. The One Closed Loop Show, March 28th, 2026. I'm bringing your attention to that date because that is the date where I was sitting inside of a Starbucks a week or two after Simon and I got back with our families from family vacation in Hawaii. And I had watched him vibe coding at the pool, not paying attention to anybody for a week straight. And I decided to basically lock myself in a Starbucks and learn Claude co-work and see what all the fuss was about. That day sticks out in my mind as the beginning of something really special. It was also the date that I really started to think about the journey that I've had with transformation and transformational technologies, not only over the past 20 years, but more recently within the past 1 year, 3 months, things of that nature when it comes to the product cleaner standards or when it comes to my weight loss journey, building the Ozempic protocol. That was a very important date for me. I also, if you guys are interested in tracking just a real world shipping use case, if you go to the Circle community and you look in the chat window, I put up the 13-page Google Doc prompt that I used to build this presentation. And Danielle, and Ari's not here, but I'm saying it for his robots need. If you guys will recall, back in graduate school, it kind of set off this journey of most people that work in the communications field where we have this love-hate relationship with building communications in the format of presentations or decks, if you want to call it. This presentation is a good example. In the past, this 36-page presentation probably would have taken me at minimum 1 day, but more realistically 2 or 3 days. This presentation in this use case took me about 90 minutes and it was a drastically different production protocol, which I explain a little bit in Circle and I'm happy to dive into later. So it wasn't necessarily the tool on that March 28th day, right? When I thought to myself, and I've explained this to several of you before, felt like I had steam coming out of my ears. And it wasn't, and I thought to myself at that point, I want to create like a bunch of new companies before I die. It wasn't because Claude had done anything in particular. It was just the state of AI in general. And it gave me the sense that nowadays there's not very many barriers to entry to enter into a category. There's no more gatekeepers and there's no more gates. But what separates people is micro attention towards the same thing. So a little bit of attention to one thing that you've identified as a goal, done repetitively over time, that leads to obsession and that leads to growth. And more succinctly, it leads to what I call a closed loop. Like I said, I wanted to create 50 more companies before I die, so I pivoted my entire business model. I switched out of being a consultant or a fractional CMO. I decided to go all in on helping people because I felt in this era, you had a lot of people, a lot of companies that were going to be very nervous about the potential for AI to inflict pain upon their industries. A lot of layoffs, a lot of firings, things like that. I happen to live across the street from somebody that works for Oracle, and he saw 30,000 of his friends get laid off about a month ago. I know a lot of people at Facebook that are dealing with the layoffs right now. AI is getting a very bad name, necessarily, unnecessarily, not here to judge whether or not AI should have a bad name or not. But what I am trying to do is get people excited about how to leverage it with the right curiosity, thinking, and protocols. A little bit of story time real quick. Some of you know this, some of you don't. This weight loss journey that I'm on to 100 pounds right now, this will not be the first time I do it in my life. It actually started when I was 20 years old. So we're talking turn of the century to make all of us feel super old. I was 20 years old and I weighed nearly 300 pounds. I was not in college. I took 3 years off after high school. I had no direction. I was drinking too much. I was getting made fun of behind my back. And a girl, I heard secondhand from a friend that there was a girl that I liked that didn't want to be with me because of how I looked. And it was devastating news. But it motivated me. I wound up stepping on the scale and just trying to make myself aware of who I had become. And I made a commitment to myself to go running every day for 100 straight days. and see what would happen. I wasn't committing to 100 pounds. I wasn't committing to a certain type of look. I just wanted to feel better and be the type of person that somebody would want to invest time in a relationship with. So 0 to 100, that was the goal. And what wound up happening was miraculous. I wound up going running every day for like 500 straight days. But within the first, I'd say 9 months or so, I ran off 100 pounds, which is the exact opposite of how I'm doing it this time around, separated by about 26, 27 years. But the process is very similar, right? Even though different methodologies, one's running and one's nutrition, it's all based on input, feedback, making adjustments, and repeating over and over and over again. So one loop pointed at everything. I wound up taking that same loop methodology pre-AI and pointing it at my education next. So I went to college and grad school, finished, both of them within about 5.5, 6 years, graduated near the top of my class in both, which was another miraculous turn of events considering I was a C student in high school and got very average SAT scores. The whole purpose and the whole way I did it was drastically different than the way I paid attention to things in high school. And I used a lot of this journaling feedback loop mechanism to actually excel in life when I had very crystal clear goals. Now, I've also repeated that same loop at enterprise level scale. Talked to some of you about my time in the Gary Vee world when I worked on brands like Budweiser and Shock Top and Stella Artois. One of the more notable things I did there was I took the AB InBev portfolio from a couple $100,000 in revenue and maybe 3 employees and turned it into an $18.5 million per year enterprise that featured 15 global and domestic digital agency of record brands. Within that, I also made it so by essentially coaching my team into being very religious about 1 or 2 things versus an ocean of possibilities. So while Gary was trying to convince everybody they needed to get their brands on Wattpad and get into this and get into that, voice, all the different things Gary was interested in, I was very interested in video, making videos for the mobile device, and being really good at distributing videos to the mobile device. Because I had read a bunch of Mary Meeker reports and I saw where the industry was going by 2019. It was going to massive broadband proliferation. It was going to apps becoming the dominant form factor in terms of communication. And then it was going to multiple device per household penetration globally all over the world. So my intuition was, if we're not good at making creative content and making it specifically for a full formatted iPhone-like device, then we're not going to be the best in class, and that's what we wanted to be. And if you did a forensic audit on the time that I'd spent on that portfolio, what you would notice is that when you did an audit of all of our successes in the revenue trail specifically, you would notice that about half of that money came from video production and the other half came from media, media commissions and media spend. So that was one instance of the similar loop or the same loop run at enterprise. But even within the same portfolio, you could take a look at Budweiser Sports, essentially our team becoming the de facto sports marketing team of the decade. What we did after the Chicago Cubs won the World Series in 2016 is nothing short of miraculous. We took the insight that came from 400,000 Facebook comments on our extremely viral video, which was we took Harry Caray and we recreated his voice over the last out of the World Series. And what was happening in that moment when people saw or heard Harry Caray call the last out of the World Series after he'd been dead for nearly 2 decades, was it made them feel about their loved ones and their relatives that had passed years prior, the people that got them into baseball for the love of the game. And it brought upon those fond memories. So we took those 400,000 comments that were in the posts, and we recycled that insight and put it into future creative endeavors that we did when Derek Jeter retired and the Yankees called us, or when Dale Earnhardt Jr. retired and NASCAR called us. We also started applying that to our military appreciation stuff when it came to the troops coming home from abroad, or when it came to giving people scholarships for the good that they were doing in their community. So we kept building iteratively on top of our previous successes and wound up over the course of 2 years building out about 1 billion impressions for the brand and moving the needle from a sales perspective. I think it was like 3% in some key markets. So really cool example of a similarly well-constructed loop at an enterprise level scale. And now today, it looks like, my 1999 experience all over again, except for instead of being 20 years old and having not as much technology at my fingertips, we're talking about the same weight battle that I had before. We're talking about a same rejuvenation or reinvention arc, and we're talking about similar style pivots in my life towards better things. So we're really talking about the same loop I've always run. We're just talking about better tooling to make it faster, so I can exist on that spiraling loop at a faster pace. This is the way I want you to start thinking about leveraging transformational technologies. And this is a theory that I think can live inside of AI, it can live beyond AI for future technologies and stuff like that, as long as you're looking to apply it in a way that's kind of in alignment with how things actually work. So my big belief is that there's a universal loop theory. I think that everything in the universe runs on loops. I know it's a grandiose claim, but it makes sense once I unpack it for you. And Andrew, this is going to start to get to when you're really looking at the different platforms out there, whether it be OpenAI or XAI or Anthropic, and the different nomenclatures that they start throwing at you in terms of the ways in which you can work inside of them. Yes, you have to worry about those because you have to know what they are and what they do, but more specifically, if you understand these loop dynamics, you can understand how to build success stories into anything you do on those platforms. So I'm going to give you some examples. And these are random examples that I picked out of a hat. I could pick 15 more examples. I chose 3. Door number 1, you've got the believers loop. Obviously, there's some believers on this call. I know that because I pre-vetted you before I brought you into this cohort. Here's one of them right now. Let me admit Dan Mahoney. So you become aware that Jesus paid for your sins. You're ashamed and you vow to do better. You begin a relationship with God. He gives you feedback through scripture, or you test this in your life. It transforms you. You make mistakes, you go backwards, and you repeat the process. It's a big loop process that you activate. And this can apply to Christianity or Judaism, Islam. It can apply to pretty much anything. But let's call that one the believer's loop. The next one is the non-believer's loop. So you're born, you meet someone unique, you make another human that combines your features, they go into the world and either repeat the same mistakes or they learn from them. Either way, it's feedback and they're growing. Or they're not growing. But it's also it's a loop nonetheless. The next one is the cosmic loop. So the Earth orbits the sun every day. The whole world takes input from it and transforms via sunlight or the way the weather patterns work. So grass, flowers, trees, deserts, people, everything is transformed by the nature of the loop itself and the feedback that repeats inside of itself. So you've got 3 doors, 1 truth, faith, biology, cosmology. And like I said, I could go on and on and on. I could do 15, I could do 30, I could do 100 more examples of the way that this loop actually works in reality. The question's not whether or not you're inside of loops, because you already are. The question is, are you running them on purpose, and are you designing them to actually make yourself better? So every loop you'll ever run lives somewhere on this ladder. So there's alpha loops, and Andrew, I'll call you out to attention again. So if you're inside of ChatGPT or Grok or Anthropic, meaning Claude, and you build a chat, let's say, and it doesn't matter if it's in the regular chat portion or the co-work portion or wherever it is, or if it's on your phone, which is yet another instance, which is one of the things that drives me nuts about Anthropic. But let's just say you open up a chat and you ask a question of your LLM and it responds to you, but you're not overly interested in that thing. You just had a curiosity. You wanted to scratch the itch, so you did. It gives you an answer. You're like, okay, that's interesting. You exit out of the chat window, never to return again, right? You're probably like me, and you're probably like everybody else. You most likely have 1,000 of those open at some point across all of your different LLMs. I call that an alpha loop. That's one closed loop. It's a circle. The next iteration and the next transformation that you have to figure out, and usually the people that are starting to advance in their grip and their understanding of these technologies, is called a beta loop or a spring. That's where you open a chat window. Again, whether or not it's in chat or co-work or something else doesn't matter completely. What matters is that you keep coming back to it. And you have very, very descriptive, very tight prompting so that it's giving you very good answers. And as you're feeding it input, it's getting smarter, and then it's giving you input back or output back. You're testing it out in the real world, and that's making you execute at a higher level, making you smarter. And then you go back to the process, you tell it what you learned, and on and on and on and on and on. It gets smarter, you get smarter. That's the foundation of my Ozempic protocol. That's a beta loop. It's a spring. Think about it like a spring. The idea here is you want to create as many of those beta loops as possible, right? And then what happens if you create enough beta loops that are all in adjacent territory, meaning they're all working towards the same end goal, then that's what I would call a sigma formation. The Greek word sigma stands for sum, right? So you're summing the total of things. So if you might have 1,000 open alpha loops, but 20 different beta loops you're running, and then you've got 5 beta loops that are actually kind of congregating around your business, or 5 beta loops that are really actually turning the wheels of commerce or what's happening from a success standpoint or a transformation point in your life, that's a sigma formation. That's beta loops running in unison for a similar end goal. Delta would be what I would call an intentional sea change in an organization. So it's when you intentionally set out to run tests across an organization and you've got enterprise level goals in mind. And then the last one is just the omega loop. That's something that is more existential. So it's more of a thing to ground you in reality. It's the universe. It's everything that exists. You could think about an omega loop as in terms of the great cosmic omega loop, or you could think about the omega loop in a much smaller contained environment, like the omega loop of Georgia commerce, right? There's a lot of different businesses, and you know what I'm saying. You can kind of shrink it down to a smaller petri dish and lab and stuff like that, or you can think about it in terms of the great unknown and the man in the sky. Going back to the alpha loop, we kind of discussed that already. Just think about that like a circle. Those are your chats. The spring, these are your obsessions. And this is, I'd say, where we are going to try to focus most of our energy over the course of the next couple weeks as we really start to stand up our consulting relationship with one another. It's making sure that I have a good grip on what you're doing and where you're going, and I can help you construct loops that make you want to obsess over them and transform your life through them. So that's where I think we're going to start for most of you guys. But then there's also the fact that some of you are on different levels of your learning than others. So if you're more of a novice to the world of transformational technology and AI, you might be really dead set about figuring out how to run one really solid beta loop. If you're more of a practitioner, meaning you've been at this for a while, then it might be more about how do I build a sigma loop formation so that way I have 4 or 5 topics running simultaneously, all aimed at the same goal. And then if you're really advanced, it might be more about how do I intentionally either get a business off the ground or completely transform a business through using these loops at every level of my organization, all departments, all people, etc. So I'm gonna skip through here because we already talked about those things and I kind of gave you a little bit of a one-off, but those slides will be in existence on the Circle platform in case anybody needs to really refer back to them. I'm not teaching a theory that I read. This is all a ladder kind of protocol. I'm living in the middle of that ladder right now. It started with the Ozempic protocol and I lost 60 pounds in 3.5 months. That gave me the confidence to build out some other simultaneous adjacent loops. This cohort, for one, is an example of how one thing spawned another thing, and now this thing is spawning 3 other things. I'm just going up that ladder and completely transforming my life from the bottoms up right now. So I am in the middle of a Sigma foundation. So I'm building a personal brand. I wrote a book. I completely changed my S-Corp Quattrone brands from a consulting firm to a coaching platform. But it all started with one very sticky process that I started to obsess over about, and now I'm just changing everything to adapt to that. What I would say, and we've been in the throes of technical conversations with Andrew this morning, this is not a replacement for Claude, and I know I've told you guys that before. The way I would think about the AI operator, it's not meant to compete with any frontier labs. It's designed to be complementary to them, and I'll explain that in a moment. Think of it like training tools for AI. So a batting cage, a pitching machine, a fungo bat, a driving range, a putting green, a lab. It's where you go to take reps. You can think about it as those things that are very physical and tangible. You can also think about it as a technological measuring stick. So think about it like Whoop or Plod or something like that. Why I think that matters is the more I'm able to kind of intercept or take receipt of data from you, the more I can help. Now I can help either way. So we have the AI operator, and me and Simon will be able to work with you on the chats that you create in the ongoing beta loops that we're trying to run all summer long, because we've created this off of Claude, so we can control more of the usage statistics and the time spent inside the app and stuff like that. But if you're an info security person like Austin, who really has to think very deep about what he's putting onto his machine, I can also build in measurement protocols into the prompting itself so that we can pull reports at any time and I can get a readout before our consulting session. Again, it's not designed to be a replacement for anything. It's designed to work in a complementary fashion, just like a hitter has a bat that they use for their game, but then they also have a fungo bat they use when they're practicing. A loop is only as good as the instruction that runs it. So we're going to get into and this is probably one of the most important things you'll learn in this session right here, making sure that what we're telling our AI is going to give us the results that we covet. We want to really make sure that we get out of the habit of being super vague. If you're very vague with what you ask of an AI, you're going to be stuck in an alpha loop. That's going to be the level of effort it gives back to you. You want to be very tight and specific. So example, act as my real-time fat loss copilot using X as a closed feedback loop. That's where you can start to prompt your AI so that you're going to start to move towards these Sigma Loop foundations. Here's the 6 parts or the anatomy of good prompting. And this is something where you could literally just print out this page, stick it at your desk at your home office or your actual office. And no matter what LLM you're in, if you can actually build a prompt with these 6 things in mind, more often than not, you're going to build a chat loop that you go back to and interact with over and over again. You want to give it a role. You want to give it a context or backstory. You want to give it constraints, things to kind of make sure that it's narrowing its field of vision. You want to make sure that it's got built-in feedback mechanisms. You want to make sure that it's got an output spec. So you want to be clear about exactly how it's returning information to you. And then you want to make sure that you've got iteration triggers and you're able to tighten the feedback loop as you see fit. Kind of like how an orthodontist over time, they make your teeth straight because they keep tightening it. They keep getting you into alignment, tighten, and all of a sudden your teeth are perfect. That's kind of what we're doing here with these prompts. So here's Ozempic laid out in all of its glory. I won't read it to you, but just trust that this prompt checks all those 6 boxes. And I've kind of highlighted the areas where it does. And I would love to take credit for this and talk about how talented I am, but that's simply not the case. It's not a talent thing. It's more of a making sure you understand the tooling plus understanding where attention is headed and how to actually get attention from these things. Actually, this is probably an easier one to go through than the actual prompt itself, so I'll kind of give you a quick read through. So role identity, act as my real-time fat loss copilot using a closed feedback loop. It names the loop in the prompt itself when you're building it. So the context is the starting point, telling it the weight, the goal, the activity, the restrictions. It's important to do this because AI won't know that unless you tell it to it. The daily inputs, that's where I come down in the morning, I step on the scale, I tell it what I weigh, I give it a 1 to 5 ranking of how I slept at night. And then throughout the course of the day, I'm uploading pictures of menus or I'm uploading pictures of what I ate. And we're talking about the macros and it's counting them for me. All the great stuff. The job spec, making sure that you're very specific about the outcomes you want, using specific numbers. I used 1,500 calories. I tightened that even further down to 1,300 because I was unwilling to budge on cream in my coffee in the mornings. Iteration trigger, so treat every check-in as a data point. We improved this system together daily. This is why this prompt became a beta and not an alpha. And then a safety note, so making sure that if you wind up transferring this out to anybody else, especially in the world of nutrition, weight loss, something like that, you're covering yourself and you're making sure that other people don't take it too far because they don't have the context. And my firm belief is that every prompt you write can and should be this good. I think we should all be very dedicated when it comes to making sure that we abide by the principle of garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage in, you're gonna get garbage out. If you put good stuff in, you're gonna get good results. One of the boldest ideas I've had, I never knew how bold it was because I was kind of ignorant in the process, and this was something I was just pursuing a passion with, which is hopefully everybody will be able to find something like this where they turn their passion into promise at some point in their life. The Gatekeepers Gospel. So one thing I've heard repeatedly as I've built out a CPG product is that regular people shouldn't be able to do this. You shouldn't be able to take a 12 to 24 month process of market research, positioning, product formation, ingredient deck, capital formation, all those things, and be able to truncate it down into a 3-month go-to-market strategy. But that's what I did. And I did that with one person, myself, and a $20 LLM subscription. So that's the world. Those are the old rules are gone, the new rules are here. So now we've got to get really interested and really curious about how to how to build in the future. So we're here, cleaner standards, ultra low ingredient, non-toxic cleaning concentrate. Danielle has done wonders to help me get this into the hands of some real movers and shakers. So hopefully I continue to build this thing in a very slow and intentional and authentic way. I think that's going to be one of the futures of existence, where we have these products that are concepted and designed and engineered with human interaction in mind, but are aided by technological on-ramps and spiral formation and beta loops and stuff like that. So if the gates are gone here in the CPG category, then they're gone pretty much everywhere. I can only think of a handful of places where you would still need some very serious gatekeepers. Of course, they should exist in more places like news media and stuff like that, although those have come down as well. But like the medical establishment, right? We still need certifications and doctorates and stuff like that. But outside of that, outside of a handful of categories, there aren't really that many gates, that many gatekeepers. And there's no reason, if you're interested in solving problems, that you can't go out and build businesses or even protocols and relationships that just interest you to the core. What I'm hoping that we can do as I've already met with a handful of you, and we've already done our first individual one-on-one sessions. My hope is that with the next handful, and as we kind of do our first cycle in this program, as I'm doing my first meetings with you guys, we can get very surgical about the things that you're desiring to run this summer. And again, it doesn't have to be necessarily one, right? Like I mentioned before, I think some of you have a more advanced grip on how to use these technologies and can probably run 4 or 5 amongst the thousands of alpha loops that you have as well. We can run 3 or 4 or 5 if you really feel like going for it, or we can really hone in on one, and we can make sure that you're running that really well and see what that turns into. This year, 2026 in particular, it started for me with one that I got really good at, and then that turned into a bunch of loops that I'm running simultaneously that are all flying in a formation towards my goal. Align on one that you can obsess over for a long time. I'm not an expert in a lot of different things. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert at physical fitness or anything like that. I've done a few things in my life that I think are really cool, and I'm willing to share all my secrets. You can bring, ideas to this cohort that are focused on your body, and I'll give you my honest assessment, and I'll work with you on building a transformational loop. We'll use AI to make sure that we bring in all the medical science and all the nutrition science and all that kind of stuff. You can talk to me about products that you have in your pipeline that you want to bring to market that I am more of an expert in. You can talk to me about your brand. I am exceptionally advanced when it comes to branding. So I'm happy to talk to you about that stuff. I'm happy to talk to you about organizational scale and what's in your pipeline, what's in your business development world. And I'm also very happy to talk to you about your team. I've managed over 300 people in my lifetime, and I've always gotten a lot of accolades in terms of team build out and my approach to team development, especially in the case of like Dan Mahoney, where he really wants to dial in. Actually, a lot of people, Amanda Dwyer mentioned this on our kickoff call as well. What's the interplay between real people and agents? It's obviously very different, but like I mentioned before, garbage in, garbage out. If we build a bunch of agents and we don't get hyper specific about their job description, we're going to build a bunch of bad agents that fail. And then you're going to have to go to Simon, and he's going to have to fix them for you. And he doesn't like fixing them for you. So let's build out your agents in a smart way in advance, and make sure that they're interacting with your team and that you've got the right protocols set up and the right schedules and calendar events set up to be effective with your agents. So singular betas mature into sigma. That's part of the ta-da of this presentation, and tight prompting is the accelerant. That's the gasoline that you pour, and that's the way you get into a AI habit. We talk a lot about neuroscience. So I'm going to bring in some guests that are AI experts. I'm going to bring in field agents from different industries that talk about how they're using AI. But when it boils down to it, some of the things that I've been interested over the past few years, and why I think this is very interesting and worth obsessing over for me, is because I'm fascinated how the human brain works. So some of my passion points are a lot of the different neuroscientists out there and stuff like that. You're going to get a fair dose of that as we go along as well. Like, what makes you tick? How does your brain work? How do you take that and apply it to these transformational technologies? So that's really it. I'm going to pop out of here. I'm going to go on to the main screen, and we can do any kind of Q&A you guys might have. I wanted to keep it intentionally a little open-ended at the back end. So if you had any questions, we could discuss them. And I can also talk to you about some of the speakers that we'll be having over the coming weeks, and anything else you want to learn. That's all the robots in here. Anybody have any real-world human questions for me?
I got a question for you.
Yeah, what's up, Matt?
So you were talking about the different categories, I guess, for prompts, right?
Yeah.
And how to tighten them up for a better result. How much can you lean on Claude or ChatGPT to help you refine some of those prompts?
A lot. So what I would do first and foremost, and I'm happy in our first session when we get into consulting to actually screen grab some of the elements of this presentation. We can build sort of like your Genesis folder where it's like your prompt library, and it can be the place you go back to in order to kind of give birth to prompts that you use in various different chat windows. I do the same thing for skill creation, agents, prompts, things like that. I typically have one folder that governs all folders that makes sure that all of my prompting and all of my development maintains a rigorous criteria. So I want to make sure that I don't have to actually know these things off the top of my head so that I'm always drafting them in the same way. I want to make sure that the folders, when I set them up, are already smart and already have the ability to recall that information so that when I put stuff in, it's almost like being on a golf course and using like a Big Bertha club, right? It's going to correct your bad swing. You can definitely build it and architect your folder structure so that you can jump on the golf course with a Big Bertha and just take hacks at the ball. Still course corrects your prompting. Anybody else? Andrew, just to pick on you a little bit.
So go get a Big Bertha at PGA Superstore and swing it while I'm voice commanding my prompts, and they'll all be straight in the fairway and go longer than the longest PGA driver. Is that what I hear you saying?
You can do something like that. So to give you a sense of how, just to show you like interesting use cases, I think it's really important to work within the structure of what makes you already comfortable. And everybody's slightly different. So voice is actually, I'm glad you bring that up. It's very integral to the way I work. I've got 4 kids. I'm constantly traveling. I'm always on the move. And if I don't have the ability to flex into the technology as it operates best in my real world use case, then it's irrelevant to me. I don't want to sit at my desktop and work on Claude Cowork all the time, every single instance. I want to be able to speak. I want to build an app just speaking into a phone while I'm driving my car. I want to use Dispatch to make sure I'm giving instructions and codes to my desktop agents. So yeah, really having a good audit and understanding of how you operate and move through the world on a day-to-day basis, you can build these structures around your preferences. And I think that's super important because if you don't do that, then you will never build these beta loops. You're going to have 5 different LLMs running on your phone and on your desktop, and you're going to use them all the same way.
I really appreciate that. That's very similar in like CRMs, and why CRMs rarely work is because the people who build the CRM are not the people who use it day to day. And just the reality is the average salesperson's not going to sit in front of a computer and type in all of those things. Obviously, note takers and things can help that, but still, it doesn't matter if you just have a big sea of where you just throw data. If it's not usable, accessible, digestible, all those things.
Yeah.
With
so
a bowls at the end of them, it's not helpful.
Yeah. Another good example is I mentioned on the top of this call how I built this deck itself, right? The old process in terms of like how you would approach a design like this is very much, similar in the sense that you're building an outline, and then you get in front of something that looks more like an object or a word processor. And in many of our cases, a PowerPoint or a Canva document or something like that. And for me, I can't get past design. If I can't see it, I can't see how it executes. And that's not how everybody thinks, but I usually would wind up spending a ton of time just getting, majoring in the minors or getting lost in the design weeds. Now that I've got things like Lovable and I've got things like Claude Design, I can get past that a lot faster because I know that if I focus on narrative arc, story, that kind of stuff, I've already got my design stuff pegged. I just need to get really, really tight on the prompting and then bring it into the design system to polish it, almost putting it into a studio, if you will. Again, that's a process that is totally comfortable for me right now because I've been running prompts since 2010 in the Super Bowl area of the IBM Watson. So there was a technical barrier or limitation that's been lifted. There's no more gatekeeper. Now I can focus on prompting the way I know how to prompt and putting it into a design studio that I pay $100 a month for, $20 a month for. So yeah, just figuring out how you work best and then maximizing it. Who's got an idea of a loop that they want to start running that they think that they can use some of this prompting to aid them in? I've got my ideas on where I want to push you guys, did this presentation really spark anything in anybody that they want to try things a little bit differently?
So question for you on that. Joe, so if I've got three, kind of so thinking about the
Sigma loop, yeah.
that you just outlined, right, with the three betas that were in there. If I've got Sigma that represents launching this company that I'm spinning up, there would be a couple, maybe 2 or 3 kind of key beta loops that would kind of go together to comprise that. Is the best next step for me to figure out what those are and kind of label the genre of each beta loop? So product, communication, community, those types of things. Is that kind of the best next step, or is the best next step to just pick the most high impact beta loop, or the one that needs the most attention right now, just get that one dialed in and then start the next one? Like,
I think it's a combination of things. So the way I would probably structure it, and we'll see as we and I've already started synthesizing our last session, so I have my ideas on it as well, so I don't want to give too much away. But where I would probably go if I was kind of attacking it from your perspective, number one, I want to take this presentation and I want to put it into a project folder, and I want to start talking to Claude Cowork about the idea of alpha, beta, sigma, delta, all those kind of things. I want to have it analyze the business based on the context that it already has of it and of you as a person operating within Claude, because it's keeping a record and it's keeping context of both your businesses and you as a human. And then what I also want to do is I'd want to go down your recent chat history, both in the chat windows and also in the Cowork windows. And I want to look at the top 5 to 10 chats that you have. Those represent the things that you're already going back to more than everything else. And that's where you can actually create a second dimension of things, where you create beta loops that run simultaneously alongside your, let's say, beta loops for business. There might be a personal one in there that needs to infiltrate the Sigma, and you wouldn't have otherwise thought so. Like for me, it was the weight loss thing. That underpins the personal brand, which also leads to the book, which leads to the cohort, which leads to all these things. And just like any other human, you're fully integrated in your being. You're not just Austin Collins, the kick-ass advisor. You're also Austin Collins, the guy that's in a bunch of cool cohorts, the guy that is like a God-fearing man. You're Austin Collins in a bunch of different ways. This methodology kind of unites all those things.
Got it. Awesome.
Sadie, you gonna let me work with you on some of your designs? Some of you guys don't know, but Sadie, I'll blow her spot up a little bit as well. She is previously from Apple and Shopify, and a lot of her education is in designing systems that are very similar to what we're talking about here. But she's a people person, and she's designed systems of thinking around organizational psychology and stuff like that. So one of the reasons why I really wanted Sadie in this group is because I'm fascinated by the way she thinks, and I think we have a lot of complementary styles.
We do, yeah. And I have a master's degree in learning systems design for technology. So like going back about 5 or 10 years, yeah.
Well, then there's that, right?
Yeah, which is, yeah. So I was in the like higher ed space. So I designed like master's degree programs with professors for about a half dozen years between Wiley and Pearson. And then Apple recruited me out of Pearson and Shopify recruited me out of Apple. So like it's been, and then I did Shopify's initial certification programming, working with all their larger sector clients, like the Deloittes and all them, getting them up to speed on Shopify. So now, like when they were like onboarding all the big guys.
So now when you guys want, especially Dan Mahoney, I'm talking to your note taker right now because I don't see you on the screen, but when we go to build your factory of agents, maybe we can design them with human touch, and we can bring Sadie in for a little design learning exercise around your synthetic agents.
Yeah, and from there just lend into social media, just because I figured out the Facebook algorithm pretty easily, and then have transitioned it into like sort of the Instagram, TikTok space, doing like a more holistic approach to like adults receiving technology and information, utilizing media. So it's been an interesting ride, but yeah. And we share a client, so that's good.
Yeah, where's Lee? Lee needs to get on one of these things.
I know. We'll see.
I feel like the Joker and Batman. Where did we get all these wonderful toys?
Yeah, no, it's been a wild, weird ride. Like I was supposed to be a high school English teacher, and that just didn't happen. So it's been fun.
The world is better off with you not being stuck in a school. I can promise you, Sadie.
Yeah.
I'm virtually certain of that, given my experience with the educational system over the last 10 years.
For sure. I'm a private school grad out of Chicago anyway, so I mean, I never really did much beyond that. So I just ended up in Southern Illinois and fell in love with like being down here and like nature and stuff. But I split time between Chicago, like Wrigley, and down here.
So
Yeah,
you
it's
resonate with my Chicago Cubs story, right? Did you see that piece of content that we did with Harry Caray?
Dude, that was the first thing that like completely endeared me to you because I grew up a block and a half off Wrigley. So I spent my childhood in the 90s, like in the bleachers when they were still $5 a seat. And the security guards from my school were also part-time at Wrigley and they let us in, side gates.
Fun fact, I'm just going to play matchmaker here, but Matt Valls is also a Chicagoan. He lives in DC now, and he grew up in like the North Carolina area, but he's a big Bears fan. I won't hold that against him.
There's a lot of those Cubs games in the 90s too.
Yeah, for sure. So much fun. I mean, I was a latchkey kid wandering around that neighborhood when probably shouldn't have been. But it's definitely a good time. And my mom's still there. She refuses to leave. I mean, she bought a Greystone in '79, so like she's there. She's never leaving. So, but yeah, it's a great area. Yeah, and I love Chicago. I mean, Caleb should turn it around hopefully again this year, but we'll see. And the Cubs, I think, just broke a 10 streak losing streak. So we're doing the best we can. But yeah, full on Chicago for sure. I could never fully abandon that city. So
Dansby Swanson, your shortstop father's in my men's executive Bible study. He's a great human being, and the manager of the Cubs used to be at Auburn when I was running track there. So a lot of ties into that organization.
Yeah, for sure. Michael Franz is there. He's a lawyer, and he was sitting on the board at one of the schools with my mom for a long time too. So Michael Brano. So yeah, they're all, and it's been just crazy seeing your neighborhood go from like kind of a, I don't want to use the term ghetto, but it was kind of ghetto back in the day, and then now it's like fucking Disneyland being there. It's wild. Like shiny. I mean, they dropped $1 billion into 5 square blocks of Lakeview. So what you gonna do? Be mad at it. So.
All right. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time. I know I got to return Austin back to the real world. I know his clients are itching to get him back on email. So I'll end it here. We'll sign off. And then next week, we've got a guy named Justin McCullough coming on, and he has a bunch of learning around goal setting specifically. So if for some reason over the next week we have a tough time really laying out what your beta loops need to be, I'm hoping that Justin's topic of conversation can be really reinvigorating. And then after that, we have my buddy Hank Leber, who he's a multi-time software kind of startup guy, but he's currently the chief revenue officer at an AI company called Stanify. Similar to how I was using feedback from our Chicago Cubs content and turning that into viral Derek Jeter videos and stuff like that. He's going to talk about the importance of the value of the inputs you're getting out of content after you put it out. So, taking that insight, feeding it back into machines, getting more learning, enriching it, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll just continue to build the foundation over the next 3 to 4 episodes, and then we'll get into some more kind of scaling as we, start rounding into the middle of the summer and beyond.